Hello, welcome. My name is Jeff Davis. This is for EDLE 6063, Advanced Educational Law for Spring 2023. The case that we will be looking at today is the Serrano versus Priest. So this was a 3 different part case that started going back into the California State Supreme Court. So just a little bit of background and information on this one. In 1968, the Superior Court of Los Angeles, John Serrano, the parent of one of the students, and other parents sued the California State Treasurer at the time due to what they considered to be wealth disparities. So with this case, there was two separate. So the first case, Serrano 1, 5 California 3D 584 of 1971. It made it to the California State Supreme Court 3 years after filing with the Superior Court of Los Angeles. And this case was all about the wealth disparities that was happening within the school system in Los Angeles. And then in 1976, there was another case which was basically saying that the time that the school district or the school system needed to get rid of the wealth disparities wasn't doing it fast enough. And then in Serrano 3, what's crazy enough is with the wealth disparities, Serrano 3 went to the California State Supreme Court and said that those people who were providing legal aid weren't getting paid in a timely manner. So this right here, Serrano 3, ended up giving the same amount of time as Serrano 2 for the plaintiff to make payment towards their legal action. Okay, so let's get to it. Within this case, we're looking at Los Angeles proper. Okay, so the entire county of Los Angeles. One thing that you have to understand about Los Angeles is that there is a lot of wealth, but then there's also a lot of race disparities. So looking at the spread of wealth, you notice the areas that are all in gray. Those areas are what is all comprised of Los Angeles Unified School District, what is recognized as Los Angeles Unified School District today. These white areas are areas that are part of the counties that are little tiny pockets. So like this right here, this is Beverly Hills. Okay, but all these little pockets end up making up different school entities that are not part of the Los Angeles Unified School District. So areas like Santa Monica, Long Beach, Glendale, Burbank, Santa Clarita, and Palmdale, and La Miranda and Pomona. Okay, if you look further over in this area, this is where you got like Calabasas and stuff. This is where like the Kardashians and them live. Okay, so one thing about that, when you look at the Los Angeles Unified School District, they serve all these areas. Now, looking at this one, West Hollywood, Universal City, San Fernando, Marina del Rey, and then including some Beverly Hills addresses in West Hills. That's the area that is within the Beverly Hills area that's not necessarily like, oh, they're from Beverly Hills and Beverly Hills High School area. But then you see over here, you see Inglewood, and if anybody remembers NWA, Inglewood up to no good, and then see how Long Beach is in there. They only do a portion of Long Beach, and that's usually the area of Long Beach that's kind of near Seal Beach. That's going to be a little bit more up to date, more near Huntington area, and then West Compton. Okay, if you've paid attention to anything from the last 30 years of LA and society, you could probably already have an understanding of what it means to be from Compton, but this is West Compton. West Compton's more like next to the El Segundo area that's got a little bit more money, and it's closer to the waterfront. Okay, so looking at this, California used the 14th Amendment side with Serrano, stating that urban and impoverished students did not have equal access to education due to these wealth disparities. So these wealth disparities that existed was that the rich and entitled were receiving better accommodations, better facilities, and better educational access, whereas the poor and impoverished were having to reach for whatever they could. The facilities were downtrodden; they just weren't there. So the one of the main differences between this case and many other cases that preceded it is that this case was about wealth disparities, not necessarily racial disparities, because in Los Angeles, wealth disparities are very numerous. Okay, so looking at this, Serrano noted the financial inequalities were caused by the financial system that tied quality of education to district wealth, educational quality dependent on geographical residency of district students, and the system failed to consider the educational needs of students, specifically within the inequalities of services provided and facilities available. They also Serrano also established legal grounds based on wealth discrimination, not racial discrimination. So Priest, the defendant, argued district wealth did not reflect the wealth of those families living in the district. So basically saying, hey, they live closer to the Beverly Hills, Hollywood area. They don't live further down south in the areas near Compton where the valuation of property was not so hot. Okay, so this is whenever they started. The state enacted State Bill 90. And that's where it implemented the use of the average daily attendance, which was still a step in the right direction, but they still hadn't done anything. So whenever, so 6 years later with Serrano number 2, the state came back and said, "Hey, you all got 6 years to bring this into in compliance." And then, so the big thing about that is that the rich are still staying rich, and the poor were still staying poor. And the accommodations that were coming towards them with the wealth disparities was keeping those poor within the poor areas. It was still basically just keeping them down. Okay, so then as they progressed further on, it was just a timetable. Okay, so as that time hit, it had been 6 years. 6 years since the initial portion of it, and nothing had changed. And so that's what brought Serrano to come back within the legal system. Okay, and so further on, time just kept passing by, and people were wondering. The legal supporters were wondering when they were going to get paid. Okay, so then came out Proposition number 13. With Proposition number 13, it ended up saying that there was only allowed to be a 1% taxable income of property value, and then it was established over time. In years past, it would be year to year, and people had property taxes that possibly would double or even triple from year to year based upon the fair market value of their home. So the market value would increase, requiring more increase of property taxes. But then the state, with Proposition 13 passing, said no, and so here came the tax collector. But in the long run, they were only allowed that 1%. So they hit that wall of bringing in some kind of equal monies and shares. And so primarily within the California Supreme Court, they said Court Justice Raymond L. Sullivan gave the deciding opinion. He agreed with the plaintiff due to equal rights protection grounds and returned the case to the trial court for review. Something more important was that the affluent districts can have their cake and eat it too. They can provide a high-quality education to their children while paying lower taxes because of that 1%. But poor districts, by contrast, have no cake at all. So even though the rich had their cake, they could not eat it with that case. So moving forward, what does this mean? All right, eventually there's going to have to be something that comes down within the educational system that's going to get rid of those wealth disparities. Let's point out the main issue. Urban and impoverished students were not provided the same quality of education. The fact that Unified School District removed and allowed those areas that are higher wealth to stay out of it ended up lowering the amount of money that was going into the school district, which meant that those areas adjacent to those more affluent areas were still paying less taxes in comparison to those people who had less income. So even though they may have had more money, they were having to pay less in on taxes, where people who had less money were having to pay a higher share of their percentage of income. So they had to try and make equitable shares across their financial systems to make sure that every student was getting a fair share of the educational financing. This ended up primarily moving it from the local control to the state control for finances, which was major for the legal precedents that put into the court. My name is Jeff Davis. This is Advanced Educational Law for spring 2023. Thank you.